You're about to listen to an episode of the Leadership Melting Pot podcast, brought to you by Lumerous. Engage with us as we dissect an aspect of leadership and see how you may apply some of what is shared across your business. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Melting Pot. My name is Romeo Effs. I'm the founder and CEO of Lumerous, a management consulting firm that works with companies in the area of ESG, organizational health, and governance. And today we will be discussing and dissecting the matter of breastfeeding and lactation support in the workplace and why it's important. And I'm sure a lot of people might be asking, why is Romeo having this conversation about breastfeeding and lactation? Because, we work a lot in the inclusion space, and this is the whole notion of being, very open and inclusive in the workplace for everyone, right? And it's a topic that is seen as very taboo. A lot of people tend not to discuss it, but, we have to get to the point to accept that women are important in the workplace. They make up a majority of the workforce, and therefore the support that they need to be able to carry out their biological functions need to be supported in every single way, right? So we have two great guests with us today. One is Simeca Alexander-Williamson, and Simeca has a master's in public health studies with a focus on health management. She's currently an advocate officer for the Global Health Advocacy Project. She works a lot in school nutrition policy in Jamaica. She has recently joined the National Infant and Young Child Feeding Committee of the Early Childhood Commission to ensure nutrition standards are paramount at an early age. And we also have Sharleen Clarke. Sharleen is an HR professional and is founder and CEO of Design to Inspire. And they provide HR services. And with a notion that the inclusion of HR services provide excellence in human engagement and and promote best practices in the workplace. So I think I'm really honored to be joined by two individuals, both women, who would understand this from a personal standpoint, but then Simeca with a nutrition background to bring that in, and Sharleen from an HR kind of policy standpoint, within the workplace. So I think, and guys, if I missed anything out, in terms of, talking about, what you guys do, feel free to interject. But for me, I think one of the things I would like to understand, especially as a male, right, is what's the difference between breastfeeding and lactation? Like, I only knew of the word lactation when my team came up with it. I'm like, what is that? So who wants to start?
But I would like to tell you that men can lactate too. But if I may, lactation is really the hormonal response that occurs after pregnancy and during pregnancy. It's the process by which the milk is produced so that the baby can be fed. Yes. So what happens when you have lactation is that your body triggers specific hormones that will initiate the projection and ejection of milk so that the baby can be nursed. I did say men can lactate, and I didn't hear a response from you.
No, I was going to respond. I was just waiting on you to finish. I was going to respond because I was like, what? In my mind, I'm like, really?
Yes, because since it's the hormonal response to that triggers this process, individuals who are not pregnant and men as well can lactate by tricking the hormone, right, to produce and eject milk. Yes.
Mm,
Yes. So
interesting.
non-pregnant women, but using the right hormonal medicine can lactate as well, and also men.
So if I may jump in, so let me just let you know I recently got internationally certified as a lactation consultant. Itself is in my title.
Right.
So as Sharleen rightly said, it's something that happens via hormonal triggers. However, there are things, for example, mothers, they can actually relactate to breastfeed other person's children or
Yes.
adopted children. So lactation is the continuous process, while breastfeeding is just the act of getting the milk from the breast to the baby, or from milk from the breast to something else, because breastfeeding via pumping and storing, or pumping and then feeding, is also considered breastfeeding.
Okay. So I mean, this is like a natural, bodily function for women. So why is breastfeeding seen as such a kind of a taboo action, especially in public? I mean, when I was growing up, it seemed that it was acceptable,
It was okay.
but all of a sudden now it's being seen as if, boy, it's vulgar and it's all of that. Like, why is that?
Romeo, why don't you tell us? What do you?
Exactly. He would.
From your perspective, what do you think?
Yeah, personally, from my perspective, I just think it's a natural thing. So, I mean, I applaud a mother who, if I see them on the bus or on the train doing that. The only thing, to be honest with you, that gets to me is if the breast is publicly shown, right? So, for some reason, I just think that, it should, you should have even like a little covering over it, and maybe that's.
But there you go. There you go. You're still having a challenge with a mother nursing her baby in public, because they're thinking that she should cover the breast. So for you to, I mean, for me, I like to see when a mother nurse her baby. It's something. I mean, I have been in public and just stood watching mothers nursing their baby. I'm like, oh, get over it. They might think you're weird, you're queer. It's something that I like to see, right?
Yeah.
But if I may though, it has become a taboo, and you use the word vulgar, right? And if you remember the, well, probably you would, probably you won't, but the World War II pinup girl, poster girl, it was a big thing around this, right? And since then, the breast has become sexualized. It's like the breast is a form of sexualized, yes. And so many other entities, which I will not call their names, added to this kind of taboo thing now, where if you see the breast, it becomes a source of sexual pleasure rather than a source of meal. So it doesn't matter if the mother is nursing, the breast is so sexualized now. And this happened since the 19th century. Before it was okay. But since
I think
then,
entertainment and music and movies and
exactly.
music have that, yes.
But my question leans to the fact that, but why then is it okay? Why is it okay for you to be in the entertainment space and have the breast out there without any sort of control, but in a state where you're naturally feeding, nourishing your child? It's unappreciated. It's a matter of where our priorities are, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right. It's the whole sexualization of what the breast looks like, because especially as a male, when you see that, then your mind just goes straight to that. Like, we're just kind of programmed to think about it. So
then in that event, now you start thinking, oh, that's gross. Why is she feeding the child? You start, because even in my practice, when I speak to some women, they say that they feel uncomfortable
doing something that should be natural,
or after a while you need to stop breastfeeding. So so it's this. I think it's just a societal cultural norms, because if you go to places like Africa and Nigeria, you still have the women sitting there. Most times they're walking with the breast just out, and anywhere, anytime the baby can just latch on and say, hey, here's my food. So
let me give you a personal example, if I may, because I'm a mother of one. And I remember my child, I had to migrate for a week for my child to stop nursing because by now he was 2. And there is this thing, and then for me, because of this thing, oh, if you have a baby in your hand and the baby seems big, but the baby is like 3 months and the baby is
Yeah.
big, they're going to ask, why are you breastfeeding? That child needs to stop, but because of the size of the baby. So I too was affected because he was 2 years old and still nursing. So I left him
Right.
for a week. And when I returned, the breast milk tasted too bad for him. After a week, that was it. But let me share an example. I remember I was in Georgia. He was at that time about 1 year or, somewhere there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a baby who loved the breast, right? I mean, nothing like the breast for him. And I was in the I think it was a supermarket, and I had him on the trolley pushing him, and he was carrying on because he needed the breast. He needed
Right.
the breast. I was with my sister and my mother because they live in Georgia. And while I'm pushing him on the trolley, and the only way to control this child was to give him the breast because that's
Yeah.
what he needed.
Mm.
And I just popped out the breast, put it in his mouth, and I'm pushing the trolley while the breast was in his mouth. And they were like, be careful, you might be locked up. Oh no, you can't do this. I'm like, oh yeah, let them come, let them come. And I'm right there,
Locked up,
because yes, and
Yeah.
that was like 6 years ago. No,
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
So the whole sexualization of the breast has become so. And then no, why you have persons telling you that, oh, the child is too big to be nursing. It's no longer for nursing. It's pleasure. It's for pleasure.
Mhm.
It's because of the whole sexualization of the breast. The child sucking on the breast with the breast being out, adds to the whole taboo of, now the woman has to cover the breast or to express the milk and feed from a
Mm.
bottle
Or to formula
Yeah.
feed.
Yeah.
or to formula feed, which is less
Mm-hmm.
healthy, well,
Mm-hmm.
for the child.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
formula
I
fed
mean,
my babe. When he got off the breast, it was straight to food. I never had to buy a formula. Never had to. As a matter of fact, he never drank from a nipple bottle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Simeca, like, at what point should that decision be made? So, Charlene said, 2 years old. At what point should that decision be made that, okay, it's time to, as they would say, wean the baby
Bean.
off the nipple? Yes.
So actually, internationally, the average age for stopping breastfeeding is between 7 and 9 years old. So that is an alarming
Wow.
thing for us because of where we are culturally. But
Yes.
internationally, meaning worldwide, anywhere else, that's what the average age is. And recently, the American Association for Pediatrics, just about 2 days ago, they updated their thing to say that 2 years and beyond. So what happens? You want to
Mm.
exclusively breastfeed in those first 6 months, so nothing else but breast milk in those first 6 months. And then after 6 months, now you can start to introduce the complementary food from the family pot, and then you gradually take them to stages where they'll get less and less milk. But what happens is just that for those 6 months, nothing else but breast milk. But then after that, you can give them whatever else and still give them breast milk.
Breast
Because the
milk,
breast
yeah.
milk it's still important. It still has all of the nutrients, the vitamins, the antibodies.
The
So
antibody.
even that you're gonna give them formula cannot create antibodies, no matter how they try to tell you that formula is as close to breast milk as possible. You as the mother, you as the person that is feeding the baby is the only one that's able to provide the antibodies, and this is based on environmental instances. So if your baby has a cold, if your baby has fever,
Right.
if your baby has COVID, your body will produce the antibodies to protect the baby and help them to get better.
But I was also reading, and I don't know how true this is, that the process of breastfeeding, the motion of the baby's gums on the breast, it almost sends a signal to the woman's body what the baby needs, and therefore the body produces it. Like, this is
That's
amazing.
correct. And in addition to the nursing the baby is also good for the mother, and not just for the health of the child as well. It helps with bonding. That's how the newborn is. That's how the baby bonds with the mom, right? So it helps with bonding, and it helps with healing for the mother.
But I was also breastfeeding, where the WHO says that breastfeeding could help to prevent almost 800 plus deaths of children under the age of 5 globally. But
Right.
the other thing that
Right.
I found interesting is that it could also help prevent the death of women from breast cancer. Seriously?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
even outside of breast cancer, other non-communicable diseases as well. So it lowers their risk of diabetes and hypertension
Diabetes.
and other cancers, so including cervical cancer. So what that is similar to how Sharleen was talking about those hormones in the beginning. Because of the hormones that
Yeah.
a mother produces through the lactation process, they form some sort of protective mechanism for the woman. So I'm not saying that it's going to eliminate the cancer or the NCDs completely,
But it reduces the
lower their
likelihood of it
right.
happening.
But women, women need to. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but if this is the case, then why is it that more women aren't just being bold enough to say, you know what, I'm saving my life, so I'm gonna breastfeed? Because I've met mothers who after like 3 weeks they've gone back to work and the child is being fed on formula.
There are other factors.
There are other reasons for that, and this along with the view and the opinions of the onlookers. You also have some women who feels that if they breastfeed, it's going to spoil the shape of their breasts, right? And so they don't want to spoil their figure. And so,
But is that true though? Is that true? I mean,
no, it's not.
What they will tell you is that it's the breasts start to elongate just through pregnancy. Because of the lactation process, they start to drop anyway. But usually once you have proper posture, you wear the proper undergarments, etc., you shouldn't have a problem. But outside of plastic surgery, which 80, 90-year-old are you going to see walking up and down with breast?
Yes.
So they're going to drop anyway. They're just using breastfeeding as another excuse as to not breastfeed, frankly. But one of the things that actually attributes to that, we have come to a place where breastfeeding has been associated with the lower class of folks. So if you are in the upper echelons of society, you can't be seen doing that because it's beneath you, and you have a stigma attached to it that if you're breastfeeding, it's because you can't afford formula kind of thing. So it's a matter of declaring your status in society. So it's multifaceted, to be honest, and I'm glad that we have this forum to speak about it, and Sharleen can speak to it more. It also has a lot to do with, as you're saying, some women have to return to work after 3 weeks, and frankly, a lot of our environments don't allow for us to continue breastfeeding for as long as we want to, for many reasons.
You see, for me, why I was able to breastfeed for so long, work was close to home. My office was close to home. And so when I returned to work, I would go home during lunchtime. I had the sitter there, and my child refused to eat. And when I say eat, because you don't give the child anything for the first 6 months. So I'm really talking about breastfeeding. He refused to eat until I was there. He would not take anything from the bottle. So I had to be going home because it was very close to home. Now, women who refuses sometimes to breastfeed, they are training the child to get used to being fed from the bottle, because when you have the child being nursed, it is hard to detach them from that, and it can create frustration for the sitter, right, for the caregiver, and all and many women, they did not have they don't have the leverage like I did to go back home to feed the child. Work is like 3 hours away, a flight away, whatever it is. And so because they want the child to get used to nursing from a bottle, they would refuse to breastfeed for as long as they should. And that is what I can tell you, that is one of the main reasons as well. I would speak to females, to mothers who say, well, then you know what? I don't want my child to become a burden on the sitter, because it's going to be hard to find someone who will stay with the child, because the child is always going to be crying. So after 2 weeks, I'm going to be expressing my milk. Pumping sound a little bit too, So I'm going to be expressing my milk, and I'm going to teach that child to feed from the bottle. And before you know it, the child is drinking formula before the end of 6 months, because they have to go back to work. We don't give 12 weeks, 15 weeks is not long enough for a child to be properly cared for and nursed.
That actually creates a spiral, because even so, what happens is a lot of persons say these things based on experience. So based on their own experience, and then they project it on other persons. So that is one of the number one reasons mothers say to me, I'm not going to breastfeed for an extended period of time, because as you said, if I continue to breastfeed, the child is going to get clingy and nobody else will be able to feed them.
Right.
However, there are methods in which you can get the child to transfer to the bottle and back to the breast to go in between quite fine. However, one of the biggest issues is that based on how the bottle nipple is shaped compared to the breast, it's easier for a baby to feed from a bottle nipple from a breast, especially depending on the different shapes that are around. And I can get technical, but I won't. And so once it is that you give the baby a bottle, they don't want to go back to the breast, because babies are smart, They're born with instincts for survival. Yeah. So if I have an easier way of being fed, why am I going to go back to the harder way of being fed? And this is where the whole nipple preference, nipple confusion situation comes in. So there are many ways in which you can advise them to ensure that they have a smoother transition. And what I keep telling mothers as well is that you can mix both the breast milk and the formula. You can express the breast milk so that it can be fed to the baby. And one of the ways that you can get the babies easier to transition to the bottle is if you still give them the breast milk in the bottle, have someone else feed them. And I usually say start 2 weeks before you're going back to work, so that you can see what is happening, how much your baby needs, and all that kind of thing. And there are some other mechanisms that the caregivers are feeding them in, so it's coming down too fast. Yeah. There are so many things that happen. The transition is not done correctly, so it basically sends you down on a spiral, and it reverses everything that you wanted to start in the first place. So I think education and support is very important.
You both mentioned the whole notion of work right there, right? And are labor laws strong enough to support women around this area, for argument's sake? So I know, the labor laws have maternity leave, which I think are not long enough anyway, right? But do the labor laws support women as far as, breastfeeding is concerned, especially the whole notion of at work and the ability to express the milk and, and all of that? Because I'm pretty sure that if the whole process continues, the woman being at work for 8 hours, that must get heavy after a while, because it's not going to stop, really,
Exactly.
So do labor laws support that? And then at the same time, like, how can, what are some company policies that you guys have seen that helps to support that?
Well, to respond to that, Romeo, the labor laws goes as far as to speak to maternity leave. It doesn't speak about
nothing to do with
just maternity leave, and that's it. Anything after that would have to be the decision of the company to do something humane for female mothers that would treat with that process. So the labor laws just speak to the right for women to be afforded maternity leave. In Jamaica, it's 12 weeks. I think in Canada it's 15 weeks. But Canada is something different, because Canada has extensive days for mothers to care for their children. But Simeca said something about expressing the milk and teaching the child to drink from the milk. But what about those children who refuse, those babies? Because you do have, mine was one who refused to drink from the bottle.
Right.
Because of the nipple. The nipple is harder, and they do have. It's Aveeno, I think the name that the bottle, that the brand is. Aven. There you go, Aven. I don't really know nipple bottles. I didn't use them. But you do have companies that try to design the nipples in a way that would
Mimic.
similar to
Mimic, mimic.
the breast, right? So you do have children who will refuse the bottle.
It's a trial and error process, which is why I normally recommend starting it at least 2 weeks before you go back to work. And what happens, it's a matter of consistency. So if the baby knows that the mother is always going to be there, as I said, babies are smart. They are instinctive to survive. If they know that the mother is always going to be there, then
they're going to refuse it.
That. Right.
I think that was in my case.
Yeah.
So usually you recommend have somebody else feed them in the absence of the mother. You try different methods. Some babies will drink the milk cold. Contrary to belief, babies can drink cold milk. You can probably warm the nipple. There are so many other tactics that you can try. Some babies will take it from a cup. So it's just a matter of trying what works for you and your baby. No two situations are alike.
Right.
But going back to even the labor laws though, so in Jamaica, because as part of the National Infant and Young Child Feeding Committee, we were talking about it the other day with relation to try and amending the Maternity Leave Act.
Right.
And as it stands, you have two weeks. It's actually 8 weeks, 40 days, I think is how they call it, because of how you guys calculate it. 2 weeks paid and then another 4 weeks, 2 months paid, and another month unpaid. So some institutions will pay. Some institutions will pay for the third month, but the government mandates 2 months paid and then 1 month unpaid, and then anything beyond that is up to the workplace. And if it is that you have vacation leave that you want to tack on, and so on and so forth. Right. And then Canada is the gold standard, because I have a friend that is in Canada and she's in her 9th month of maternity leave, and I'm just like, wow, you're really living the life over there. Yeah. So they get up to a year. They get up to a year of maternity leave.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah. I mean, same thing in the UK. You can get up to a year's maternity leave. I'm not sure. You don't get paid. The company pays you up to a certain point, and then the government takes over.
I think the government takes care after a period of time in Canada as well.
We don't have
how can company? I mean, do you think you're talking about the laws? Do you think the laws need to change to support even the whole notion of, even if they come back to work, and coming to your point of you saying that it's 2 years and beyond should be the gold standard, right? Even if the female comes back into the workplace, there should be some kind of immense flexibility or regulation to say that, you know what, especially in this era of COVID, working from home 2 or 3 days a week so that you can breastfeed, or or some kind of something where
I think it's the right time now to have that discourse, given that pre-COVID, working from home was also a taboo, especially locally here. But now that it has become the norm and people are requesting to work from home now, I think it's the right time to have that discussion to say, well, then we'll allow you to work from home after you've completed your maternity leave, the standard maternity leave. You can work from home to continue to nurse for a period of time. But then again, it's based on the type of job tasks you have. Of course, if you are working in the maintenance area, then you can't do that. But if you're working in customer service, then they can set up your equipment so that you can do whatever you need to do from home. So I think that kind of discussion can be had now that many people are still working from home because it's requested. But the companies can do other things as well to support, breastfeeding mothers who are nursing babies. Because like you said, once the body is lactating, it doesn't stop because the mom is at work. And so there are various type of things that the mother has to do. Some even wear a nappy in their brassiere to counteract the flow of the milk, because when the lactation happens and the breast is overfull, what it's going to leak. Yes, and there are many things. So you can talk about a specific space for, call it a lactation room, right? Where mothers can get access to that room to, go and take care of what they need to do. I think we can look at something like that. You have companies that are already doing that,
Right. We have a company here, JMMB, as a matter of fact. They actually have a nursery that is in close proximity to their location where moms can, leave from work, take a break, and they actually have that room with a comfortable seat, a private space where they can either pump and express their milk, or they can interact with their child and breastfeed. I was talking to a CEO. She owns she has a pod school, and she was saying that she believes in the whole breastfeeding thing, so she allowed one of her employees to breastfeed while she was there. But she says, in retrospect, what she would do is create a schedule with the person so that whenever she needed her, etc., she would not be unavailable because she was breastfeeding or pumping. So it takes a lot of time and planning. You have to actually be very empathetic towards the mothers and the parents' situation while still looking at what your job needs and the purpose that you're hiring the person for. So we can't be selfish, we can't be selfish, we can't be unrealistic, we can't say, oh, the mother needs to breastfeed, so we're going to give her all of the leverage to do whatever she needs. We have to take into consideration.
There has to be a balance.
Right. The person was hired for a reason. So I'm hiring you, I'm paying you. So let us create something. But it has to take some amount of consideration and empathy from the employers in order to make it work. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible. There are means and ways to do it, because my issue is what happens is that the way how lactation and breastfeeding works, it's a supply and demand. So if you reduce the amount of time that the baby is breastfeeding, the breasts are gonna say, hey, you don't need any milk. Let's start making milk. And as Sharleen was saying, what happens is that lactation, it's a hormonal response. So all the mother even has to do is think about her baby, and the breast starts.
And the breast starts. The body is
amazing.
Superb.
I know.
It's a feedback mechanism. So it's gonna stop. You're gonna stop birth. You're gonna make less milk, and that's where it starts. Okay, baby, go on. Baby not getting enough milk because the brain is saying I don't need to make it. So it's really a cycle, and we are the ones that control it. So
I'm just thinking about it, that God should have made a balance. Like the female would have the baby and the men would then breastfeed it. Then we as men would then completely understand.
And then we wouldn't understand. And then the cycle, then men would be saying, oh, I should have been breastfeeding.
No. But you know what would happen? The laws would change so much to ensure that
breastfeeding could happen. That is so true. That's what is a man's world, really. It is,
yeah. Yeah, of course. And even if we did it in public, no one.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any problem. You would probably be more macho for doing that in public.
Like you go
exactly.
Breastfeed, go.
But I was just thinking that, okay, so if companies then have this physical space, right, for women to be able to do this, shouldn't they also provide like a separate refrigerator for
argument's
sake for it?
Some of these companies they do
to put it in the same.
They do. Some companies, they do. Google is a good company. Well, it's not advertisement here, but they do. They have refrigerators. They have the room. They have the room is set up in a way that would afford comfort for the mother. And if the mother is expressing, then she has the refrigerator to store her milk. So they do. These companies that have these type of facilities, it is very comfortable, well thought of, well presented, for the mothers using the facility, they have different mechanism as to how to allow the mother. So it's not that anyone can have access to the room. It's a private space. The mothers have to schedule their time to use this space, right? So they do provide those amenities to ensure that the mothers are comfortable in the space, and it is private to them as well.
So Sharleen is speaking in a perfect world, and I mean, Google has all the money that they can afford, because whenever you click something, Google makes money. But let's look at the institutions that really don't have that much, So we don't want to give them reason to say that they can't support a mother breastfeeding. So let us just be as simple as possible. Yes, ideally you want the mother to have privacy. So we say even in the US, there are laws to say that you must allot a mother time to breastfeed and have a space that is not a bathroom. That's the first thing.
Okay.
Yes, not a bathroom.
Imagine it is if a mother has to pump in a bathroom, it is synonymous with you sitting on the toilet and eating your lunch.
Yes,
so just keep that image in mind. You have to keep in mind that it has to be a space where you would want to have lunch.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be an AC perfect room with a refrigerator or anything like that. But let it be a space, even if you get a trifold door to just block out the space, to have a curtain so that she can have some privacy. Just at least about 10 to 15 minutes every 2 to 3 hours is enough. And we need to keep in mind about presenteeism and absenteeism, because I can guarantee you every 2 to 3 hours, most of us are wasting 10 to 20 minutes anyways, whether we're going on our phone or we're chatting with our coworker or whatever the situation is. So we need to
cigarette break and coffee break.
Exactly.
You said something. Look at that cigarette break, and most company has that space that allow people to smoke. You have the smoke, the non-smoking zone and the smoking zone, and you have those space for persons to smoke.
I'd love to jump to the whole notion of like, what are some of the policies or that companies should have in place, to support this. But, there is, I think it's either Accenture or Deloitte, one of those large consulting firms. What they actually do is, especially for their female consultants who travel abroad, who needs to do this, they actually employ DHL to go and pick up the breast milk.
Yes.
And ship it back home to the babies,
that's true.
right?
That's true.
But coming back again, those are the companies that can afford to do stuff like that. But it just goes to show that it just goes to show that if you really want to support, you can do it. It's like now a big thing here in the UK is and boy, trust me, I don't like, my hat goes off to women even more that I learn about these stuff. Like, my daughter just started her whole menstrual cycle, and the pain that I see her go through. And then I think about menstruation, then pregnancy, then menopause, then lactation, and husband just walk around skipping like,
Yeah, because you are in the perfect world.
Right?
Simeca, he's
a men's world, right? Yes,
but even so, it's painful too when lactation is painful too when the woman is not able to express. You need to know that it is a terrible pain, and the breast can be so swollen that she can end up in the hospital.
Mastitis, get infection, get fever. They're so hard. Some women have to do surgery to remove the cyst because of the hardened milk that happens in there.
Yes. That happens when.
What do you think businesses can do to kind of, make this much more, for want of a better word, palatable for women, to create that wholesome, inclusive environment?
It starts first with a discussion. Because first you have to shift the paradigm a little bit, right?
But is that a discussion with everyone, or just discussion with
it starts with the discussion with the powers that be, because those are the change makers in the organization. So you have to get them on board to say, well, then let us look at a policy that will enable our mothers to have this space, and then from there we have to get experts in like Simeca who would come in and do an educational talk with them. We have to collaborate with other entities, because if listen, to get up tomorrow and say to a company, listen, we need to implement this strategy, it's not easy if they are not of the mindset. So the first thing is to caress the mind and to ensure that you bring in the right people to say, well, then listen, because you didn't know what we just told you, that you can end up in the hospital if you don't get to express it. You didn't know. So we are not, so they don't, some don't know. And so if we bring the facts to them and say, hey, then we can begin the process of, being a little bit more humane and understanding, empathizing with our mothers.
So this is, so you're saying start with the leadership in the business, so
Yes,
you
that's
get
where you
them
have
on
to start.
board,
You have to
right?
start with the leadership
Yep.
because they are going to be, they are key to making this difference. Because if we don't start with them, it
Yeah.
cannot happen. You know, and
And
you
if
don't want to
Yeah.
start the discussion before discussing with them. So you need to
And if
start.
I may, in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, some of these things start from the grassroots. So, all right, so Charlene, and there are many ways in which you can approach it. So, Charlene is saying you want to start with the top dogs, right? I have no problem with that because they're the ones that can do it, cut through, get the changes made.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
you have to start in the grassroots. For example, if I'm at an organization and Charlene is my direct supervisor, for example, I can have a one-on-one discussion with her and say, this is
Right.
my situation. And she's my direct supervisor, so she knows what my duties are and what she needs from me. And if
Right.
I can have that conversation with her, explain what is happening, she can allow me to get my 10 or 20 minutes break every 2 to 3 hours within that space. And then
Yeah.
once she sees what that has done, how effective it has been or not, she can then have the conversation with whoever her middle management supervisor is, and it goes up, and then you can have a roundtable discussion from there to see what can be implemented in order to have things done. But what we need to realize is that we also need to empower mothers to let them know that it is their right to ask for these things to be allowed onto them, because a lot of
Right.
times, based on how the employment space is created, us at the bottom decide that we don't have any talk, we are nobody, so we just have to accept what is given to us.
Right.
But you say they're right. I mean, you know, a lot of people might say, you know, okay, it's not enshrined in law, right? If there's no regulation, so is it then that we're coming back to say it's a human right as a mother?
So in Jamaica, the Ministry of Health, we've spoken about the WHO, we've spoken about the AAP, CDC, they all tell you that you should exclusively breastfeed for at least
At
6 months.
least.
These goes into the social
Right. Okay.
development goals. It talks about economic, it
Yes.
breastfeeding
Yes.
in and
Yes.
of itself covers so many things that we have already ingrained in the constitution, and to make a successful and productive and economic society. So most
Yeah.
times in business, my background is not in business any at all, but I've done so many things with relation to management that what you always need to do is touch their bottom dollar. And once you're making anyone, an individual, a company know that their bottom dollar is being affected, they will start to
They
listen.
will start.
If you really
What?
think about it, you know, I mean, the most valuable resource for business are human resource, regardless
Yes.
of whether or not robots coming, artificial intelligence, it can't function without humans, right? And if we
Right.
don't have a healthy society, then productivity is gonna go down. And
Right.
a healthy society starts from, my grandmother always talked about her constitution, right? You know, is right. And I didn't realize that the word constitution is a biological term that means the foundation of your immune system is structured right. Yeah. And so, you know, just from the conversation I'm having here, that breastfeeding is what helps to make your constitution, your biological foundation right and strong. So yeah, from a business perspective, you know, leadership and business need to see it from that angle, right? If you don't have healthy human beings to work in your business so that the bottom line get impacted, then it's not going to work. So therefore, women need to be given the you know, the flexibility and the policies in order to do this. But Sharleen, I mean, do you think, or both of you, do you think that written policy is needed in companies to make this happen? Because a lot of times, you know, what you find is that even though leadership might agree and the grassroots might be pushing for it, middle managers, those supervisors, if there isn't something there that gives them the authority to do it, it's hard. Like, you know, so do you think policy works, written policy works or not?
Yes, because we you know, we function like that. That is how we function. You know, without policies, then what happen is chaos and mayhem. So with policies, you know, people tend to function in different way. I'm already thinking about a policy. Yes, just as how you have a health and safety policy, right? So and I'm being truthful, Simeca, I'm already thinking about a policy because In the absence of that, persons might treat it as, okay, let us see. Because
Doesn't matter.
as Simeca said before, you start with the grassroots. And here is one of the reasons too that,
Yeah.
you could start with the grassroots. You see, when you reach to the persons who are going to effect this change, you have to go with facts. So you have to go and say to
Yeah.
them that, okay, we have 1,000 female staff. Of the 1,000 female staff yearly, we have 20% going off on maternity leave. We have 40% becoming pregnant. And we have, then now you have to show them, okay, because these female staff are not able to, express the milk or breastfeed, we have numerous sick leave, because we know that people do not take sick leave
because they're sick, right?
We have numerous sick leave. You do have
Yeah.
mothers who will leave their jobs to take care of their children. So you have to go with these facts for them to see, well, especially if they I had never used constitutional rights. You never use words like those, because it seems as though you're coming off
Emotional.
Yes, so you try to go with facts and simple terms, and you're caressing. I like to use that word, but you're caressing their minds, and
And the policy is all good and fine. The policy is all good and fine. People are still gonna break them. So I always say, you have the policy, but you need enforcement. Because, for example, in Jamaica, we recently had a no smoking policy within public spaces and all sorts of that. And it was a big campaign, and it went on. There's no enforcement. So one body pushes for it to happen, and the government jumps up and says, yes, excitement. But because they're not seeing the benefit for them, there's no need for enforcement. So yes, policy is very important, because you have it written, and I have someone who always say, if it's not written, if it's not recorded, it's not done. Fine, you have it on paper, but you need enforcement. You need people within the institution. So just like how Sharleen said, you have the health and safety policy. I know you have other groups within there. You can have a committee that looks towards these things. You're looking at the health and the comfort and the benefits for the employee. So these are benefits, benefits and incentives. I keep saying benefits and incentives don't have to be monetary. These money is not the only way in which you motivate people to do. So if you have a company that encourages mothers and supports them to breastfeed for as long as it's comfortable for both they and their child, because it's now saying 2 years and beyond. Look at the formula shortage that we're having. Can you imagine you were sending a mother into the inclination that formula is better than her breast milk, and you told her that she should formula feed, and now there's a formula shortage because you took away her instinctive right to feed and nourish her child that happens naturally without having to purchase formula? You have done injustice to your staff. So you need to think, as you rightfully say, Romeo, the human resources, that is the most valuable resource in your organization. And the more that we decide that we're going to actually value our human resources, we start to take a different perspective of things, different way we approach things.
A lot of these food companies, really need to take some responsibility for all of this, because they're the ones pushing the narrative about this formula, 0 to, if they didn't start making formula for 0 to 3 years old, I mean, mothers would know right away that there's no way that they can breastfeed.
No choice,
they have no choice but to breastfeed, right? It's the whole notion. I remember growing up in Jamaica when they used to say, my grandmother used to make coconut oil, and then there was this big thing, that coconut oil is bad for you. It gives you cholesterol.
Yeah, but it's the best now.
And now everybody's now saying, it's the best thing. So, there has to be some form of responsibility taken there. But like, for example, here in the UK, and I agree with you in terms of the whole notion of enforcement. One of the things that most companies have here in the UK is what they call employee resource groups, right? So you have like a woman employee resource group that advocate for, the equality and inclusion of women in the workplace. You have one for ethnic minorities. You have one for people from the LGBTQ, one for disability. And what you find with these employee resource groups is that they advocate, they uphold those policies that affect them, their level of inclusion and belonging in the workplace. So, that is also where I think the enforcement will come in. But also having the policy gives the employee the right to speak up and say, this is the policy.
That is important.
Because without it, you don't have any power. Without it, it's just words. No,
It's
there's
just words.
nothing behind
It's
it.
just words. And then no, you do have to have those persons who come in to ensure that the policy is being upheld. Because without that too, you don't have a policy. What happens to an individual when they're in the space doing what they're not supposed to do? If nothing happens, then one individual turn into 2, turn into 100, turn into the entire community. If the company really, really believe in the trueness of the human capital being the most resourceful resource in the company, then I mean, they will buy into the policy. You see, many times when, like Simeca said before, many times when company refuse to do certain things because they're looking at the bottom dollar. Yes. And as such, you have to present it in a way where you're saying to them, if we do this, your productivity will increase tenfold. Because no longer you will have so many sick leaves. People would want to come to your company because of the policies that you have that suggest that, listen, we believe in our people. You know, so we have to have the discussion in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking that, for example, here in the UK, right? You know, there's now a big thing in terms of transition policy, right? So this is where, like, you know, men or women who want to transition from one sex to the other, you know, the company supports them, right? And, you know, I'm all for that, right? But there, as part of the policy is, when they come back to work, there's a whole checklist of you know, educating their team in terms of what language to use, how to treat them, all of that kind of stuff. And
Romeo, that is very necessary.
Yeah.
No, but I'm now thinking, why is that not done for women when they come
back from maternity leave?
Yeah, you know, and it's not just the whole notion, you know, it's not the whole notion of just around the lactation and the breastfeeding, but it's the emotional imbalance. You know, from being away from the child. So if she snaps, don't take it personal. It's just the hormones. I think that would be a great way, and I'm gonna start advocating for that.
So Candice, I'm almost sure that it was for Lumerous as well. She had written an article where she did an interview with me, and that was one of the things that I had recommended. I recommended that even from the point that a mother knows that she's pregnant, right? Because you have to discuss with the HR so that you can set when you're going off on maternity leave XYZ. You guys have a document. You know, when you say document, it sounds so, you know.
Yeah, formal.
Right. But just have a working document, a little paper that says these are the things that are expected when you're going off. These are the things that we need when you're coming back. So how long you're gonna be off on maternity leave? What are some of the things that I can afford it to be more comfortable? Do I need to file for your insurance for you? If you're a male, even male should be included in this. And as you said, you have your inclusion. But even if you're a father, paternity leave. Paternity leave is very instrumental in supporting it because it's a family. It's not just a mother and her baby. Yes, the mother is the one or the person who gives birth to the baby, but the partner who is supportive is also instrumental in creating that environment to make sure that the home is wholesome. So we need to take that into consideration as well. So paternity leave is one of those things that we need to consider. But okay, when the mother comes back, now, once you become a mother, your sick leave days are no longer your own. Yes, we speak to you taking sick leave because you don't feel like coming to work, fine. But now, if your child is sick, you have to take sick leave. And you don't get an extended sick leave because you have a child. Your 10 days that you get now you have to be reserved as to when you take that because, okay, he's going to get a vaccine or he needs to go to the clinic to get a checkup. So you no longer are a body, because you have an extension of you. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration when we're talking about this paper, when we're talking about this document, the checklist that we're going to do to ensure that mom does not have her mind at home and is here in body, and in total there's no productivity because there's no balance in allowing for this new life.
Yeah. I mean, I think now that you're thinking, you're talking, I think that there needs to be women who have children and come back in the workplace. They should have 2 sets of sick leaves, right? One for themselves. Right?
And one for the child.
And one for the child, seriously. Yeah, because I never thought about it until you just said that, Simeca. The fact that, the child gets sick. And if the child gets sick, the mother has to take either a vacation or a sick day from her allotment to go and care for the
For
child.
the
That's
child.
just completely unfair, you know? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. They should, at least for the first 2 years, they should get some additional days in terms of taking care of the child, right? And of course, there are people out there who might abuse it, but I think that majority of women would not do that, right? They'll
Yeah,
do
they
it
would
in a
appreciate it.
very honest, transparent way. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. Oh my God, this is amazing stuff, guys. Like I've learned I've learned so much. I've learned so much from this whole discussion. And the whole notion of, well, like, coming into this, I wasn't even thinking about the father, right?
Right.
No, yeah, you're right. You have to take the father into consideration, because, you know, the fact that they are on paternity leave, you know, but even the whole notion as well that the mother might be at work ill and somebody needs to go and get her. You know what I mean? Be
Or
traveling because of
or
work.
or let us begin to trigger the hormone in the men so that they can now lactate and help the child. How
We would
about
turn
that?
the universe would turn upside down. Best believe it would turn
No,
upside down.
you know, I was having a discussion with another group of women about, you know, menopause in the workplace, and I said to them, look, if men had to go through menopause, a pill would have
Oh
been
Lord.
created to get rid of
Oh
that. Yeah,
yeah.
would have created a pill a long time ago,
Yeah.
right? To make
Yeah.
sure that didn't happen, right? Or even go through monthly periods, right? You know, we create a pill.
Oh yeah.
But I think, you know, I think one of the things I've learned from this, another thing I've learned from this discussion with both of you, and thank you so much, is the whole notion that women need to take back the power, right? You know, women need to take back their power of their body and knowing what is right, and regardless of what us men or the wider society think, you know, they have just brought this child into the world, and they have to ensure the survival of this child, because every other animal does that, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
animal, make sure that their child survives.
Mammals. The mammals,
Yeah,
right?
mammals. In the same way that, you know, a mother would literally kill to protect her child, right?
Yeah.
You know, they need to see that breastfeeding is your way of ensuring the survival of that
Viral
child
of the
for a
child, right?
longer period of time, right? For a
Right.
longer period of time, you know. So both of you, you know, thank you guys so very much for this very frank and open you know, discussion. You know, is there anything else that you guys would like to share that you think that you didn't get a chance to share around this topic, really?
I mean, this conversation, it's never ending. It could go on and on forever and ever, because there are so many different angles. There are so many different things that you want to touch on, whether it's starting from the grassroots, going up to the top dogs, talking about government policy, workplace policy, whatever it may be. But, you know, Romeo, I just really want to thank you for this forum. It starts from here. It
Right.
starts from conversations like these. You just have to have a conversation. You know, nothing happens overnight. A tree doesn't get big the moment you plant it. So you have to start. And we don't want to just start and think it's gonna magically happen. We need to have conversations with the right people. As Sharleen says, you need to talk to the people who are going to be instrumental in making things happen. And once you have an interest, once somebody is willing to listen, you talk to somebody, and it's going to be a domino effect. This is how we are shaping our society. And if we start at the beginning and ensure that the foundation is right, then imagine 20 years from now, imagine what the next generation is going to look like. And we really just need to start. Breastfeeding has taken a 360 turn, because, as Sharleen would have said, back in the day, having your breast out was fine. And then we had the whole institution of formula for many reasons. There's a whole history on that. But now women are coming back around and deciding that, hey, breastfeeding is what is best for my baby. And that is why we're having these discussions now, because the mindset is changing. We're going back into a stage where we realize that breastfeeding is important. And I keep saying that, you know, COVID, everything that is happening now with the technological phase, the technological stage, you know, you had the Renaissance phase, all of those things. We're now in the technological era, and don't think that the formula shortage was by any sort of error. I will be careful in how I say that. That is also to make us notice how important breastfeeding is. Don't get me wrong, formula has its place. It does.
Yes.
But when we
Yes.
come into
It cannot replace breastfeeding.
It can't replace breastfeeding. And if we take care of the woman, take care of the baby, you're taking care of society.
Yeah,
and just my final thoughts. When I got invited to sit on this panel, something struck me, Simeca and Romeo. Something struck me because there is a social media platform that every time on my FYP, I would see women with the breasts out feeding the baby every time, and I'm saying, what is happening here? You know, it has become so regular that women are on the social media, and then in the comment section, you'll hear some people, oh, this is not the place for it, and then you'll have some person saying, oh, this is good. But I'm seeing a lot of women showing, you know, and it was when I was invited to sit on this panel, I was like, hold on, because I kind of made my own assumption between the correlation of the absence of formula and no, women have to be. You had people selling breast milk. No, when I saw that, you know what it was? Women were being paid to come on the platform and breastfeed their children.
Right.
It was a campaign.
Yes,
it was a campaign because too many people are feeding into this taboo, and it's affecting our generation. You said something that is fundamental, and
yes,
especially with the boys, when you find that they grow up and they have this emotional imbalance, most of the times they were never breastfed, and it affects them. Honestly, because breastfeeding helps to nurture the emotions as well. So it was a pleasure being here, and
I mean,
we need to continue. It needs to continue.
Oh, absolutely. We you know, the next topic we're going to be discussing is the whole notion of fatherhood and should they receive paternal leave. You know? The team comes up with these really bold, you know, I call them crazy bold ideas that we really need to have the discussion. And I can't thank you guys enough. I think that our audience would be immensely educated, you know, from all of this, you know, based on what the two of you have said. And we will include your social media handles, all of that in the link, so we can get stuff going. And you know, let's just keep the conversation going. You know,
please.
It's very important. Yeah.
Hashtag normalize breastfeeding.
Absolutely.
Look at that.
Normalize breastfeeding. Yes.
And I'm gonna leave him with a little thought. Hashtag 2, normalize lactation in men.
Not giving up on that one.
With that, folks, that's all we have for today's episode of the Leadership Melting Pot. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you so much for our two guests, Sharleen and Simeca. I couldn't ask for two better people to have this conversation with. You know, our next episode will be, you know, it takes two to tango. You know, fathers should receive paternal leave in the workplace and support mothers. So it's a continuation of all this. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining us. You know, you can find us on social media. This podcast is on all your podcast platforms, on YouTube, and you know, join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Lumerous PLC. So thanks again. And I'd like to just, as you know, we say in Jamaica, big up the team behind all of this. Candice, you know, Ralph and George from my team for the amazing work that they're doing, and I'm pretty sure the guest will send that sentiment as well.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. You can also reach us and find out more about us via our website, lumerous.com.